I used to think there was nothing more peaceful than a cul-de-sac at night. The kind where every lawn is trimmed, every driveway is smooth, and the streetlights hum softly like crickets. I moved into my house 3 years ago, right after my divorce. It felt like a place where nothing bad could happen. The Parkers lived next door. Walter and Marlene, mid-50s, married for decades. The sort of couple you'd expect to see in a retirement brochure. Coordinated sweaters, smiles that didn't quite touch their eyes. We exchanged polite waves, but they never lingered. I figured they were just private people. It was the noises that made me notice them. At night, when I sat on my porch, I'd often hear faint scraping from their garage, or a single heavy thud followed by total silence. Once I heard a sound, like something being dragged across concrete. Yard work or home repairs, nothing to worry about, right? But then came the smell. It wasn't constant, just a strange, sweet odor drifting over the fence on certain nights. I mentioned it in passing once to Walter while taking the garbage out. He stopped mid-step, looked at me longer than felt normal. "You must be smelling the compost," he said. "Good for the garden." Except I'd never seen them plant anything. The neighborhood started changing. The couple 2 houses down, the Fosters, moved away without warning. One day, their blinds were open. The next, their windows were dark, and the moving truck was gone. A month later, the Ramirez family left. No for sale signs, no goodbye parties. I asked around. Nobody had a clear answer. People shrugged and said things like, "Guess they wanted to be closer to family." But I noticed something. The ones who left had all been spending time with the Parkers before they disappeared. I don't know why I started keeping track. Maybe loneliness makes you fixate on things. But I began watching their house from my upstairs window. Their routine was uncanny. Porch light on at 7 p.m., off at 10. Curtains drawn at exactly the same time every night. No laughter, no television sounds, just that strange mechanical order. One night, I saw Walter in his backyard, standing perfectly still, facing my house. His hands were behind his back. I froze at the window. He didn't move for at least a minute, then slowly turned and went inside. The porch light clicked off. The next morning, I found something on my porch. A jar. Inside was a grayish powder with a faint metallic smell. No note. I almost threw it away, but instead, I put it in the garage, telling myself I'd ask them about it. I never did. A week later, Marlene appeared at my door holding a pie. "Apple," she said. I invited her in, mostly out of politeness. She sat in my kitchen and asked questions that felt invasive. Did I live alone? Did I have family nearby? Was I a heavy sleeper? She laughed when she asked that one, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. Her eyes kept drifting toward the jar in the garage, visible through the interior door. I hadn't mentioned it, but I swear she knew it was there. That night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. My bedroom faces the street, and through the blinds, I saw the beam of a flashlight moving across my yard. At first, I thought it was an animal, but then I saw them, Walter and Marlene walking slowly along my property line. He carried the flashlight, she carried something small and shiny. I stayed still until they passed, then crept downstairs and checked the locks. Everything was secure, but when I looked out the back window, the jar was gone from the garage. The next day, I decided to confront them. I knocked on their door. Walter answered, smiling like always. I mentioned the flashlight, the jar, the smell. He tilted his head slightly. "You must be mistaken. We were asleep." Marlene appeared beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "You should get more rest," she said. "You've been looking tired." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. That night, the noises came back, louder this time. Metallic clinking, low murmurs. I pressed my ear to the wall we shared along the garage. "Not ready yet," a voice said. Walter's, then Marlene. "He will be." I backed away and didn't sleep. 2 nights later, my doorbell rang at 2:41 a.m. I didn't answer, but the ringing didn't stop. Slowly, over and over. Then, silence. In the morning, I found a single Polaroid in the mailbox. A photo of me taken through my bedroom window. I stopped leaving the house at night. I stopped opening my blinds. I bought new locks, a security camera, even a motion sensor. But the strange part? None of the footage ever showed them. The motion sensor went off, but when I checked, there was nothing there. The smell grew stronger. It seeped into my vents, my clothes. I started feeling dizzy in my own home. I tried staying at a motel, but every time I returned, something was different. A chair moved, a glass missing. On one occasion, my toothbrush was wet. I called the police twice. Both times they came, knocked on the Parkers' door, and left a few minutes later, smiling like old friends. Last week, I heard a knock at my back door. I didn't answer. The knocking became tapping. Slow, like a finger on glass. It went on for nearly an hour. When it stopped, I waited another 30 minutes before checking. On the step was another Polaroid, this one of me sleeping. I'm writing this because tonight, at exactly 7 p.m., their porch light didn't come on for the first time since I moved here. The curtains are still open. I can see into their living room. The only light is from a single candle on the table. Between the flickers, I think I can see them both staring out the window. Not at the street, at me. And there's something else. The jar is back on my porch. This time, it's open. I wish I had never looked out my window that night. I wish I had stayed in my apartment pretending I didn't see. But curiosity is a curse, and hindsight? Well, hindsight won't save me. It started like any other evening. I was pacing my apartment, restless, half listening to a podcast I wasn't really following. Across the street, the Harrisons' house was quiet, dark, except for the glow of a single lamp in the living room. But in the faint light, I saw her, Elaine. She was carrying something bulky, wrapped in a dark tarp, moving with a careful, almost ceremonial precision. I froze. My mind raced. That wasn't David. That wasn't just a box. That was him. My stomach churned, but I couldn't look away. She slipped him into her car, drove off into the night, and returned almost immediately, smiling at me through the window as though nothing had happened. I sat there, paralyzed, pretending to adjust my blinds. My hands shook. My mind refused to process what I had just seen. The husband, the man who had always waved too long in the hallway, whose presence had been too heavy, too watchful, was gone. Not just missing, gone, and I had witnessed it. The next morning, I avoided looking at their house. Elaine greeted me at the mailbox, cheerful, casual. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. I mumbled something incoherent. She smiled. I told myself it was best to act normal, to pretend nothing had happened. But everything changed. Every sound, every shadow became a warning. I started hearing soft noises through the walls at night, whispers I couldn't make out, always just on the edge of hearing. I thought about calling the police. I even rehearsed it in my head, but something stopped me. That smile, that knowing smile, she knew I saw. And I had a horrible, sinking certainty. If I acted, it would mark me. For days I watched. Elaine was meticulous. She left the house at odd hours, sometimes carrying large bags, sometimes small boxes. She would glance around, careful, precise, as though she expected someone, anyone, to be watching. And now I was. Sleep became impossible. I sat awake, lights on, door locked, watching shadows move across the walls. Every step outside my apartment made me nauseous. Every sound in the hallway set my heart racing. And always, I felt her presence, just beyond my vision, in the reflections of my windows, in the shadows behind the curtains, even in the soft whir of my refrigerator at night. One evening, I saw her again. She returned from a long walk, carrying nothing. But as she passed the streetlight across from my apartment, I caught sight of her face in the glass. A glance, fleeting, terrifying. And then I realized something worse than fear. She wasn't alone. David. Or what remained of him. Not physically, not alive. But in the way she held herself, in the way she moved, I knew he was part of whatever ritual, whatever practice she had perfected. He was contained, silent, still, watching. Or maybe he wasn't watching at all. Maybe she had erased him entirely. And now I understood. The rhythm of the footsteps, the whispers, it wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. I had seen too much. I had witnessed her crossing a line. And witnesses, she seemed to think, were disposable. Last night, at 2:17 a.m., a soft, almost imperceptible thudding began. Light at first, irregular, like something heavy shifting in the floor above. Then it grew steadier, moving closer to my apartment door. I pressed my body against the wall, trying to make myself small, invisible, and then I heard her voice. "You saw." I didn't respond. I couldn't. "You shouldn't have," she said, and the whisper carried a weight I couldn't describe. It was not angry, not cruel. It was absolute, inescapable, certain. I knew it was no longer just a threat. It was a promise. I barely leave my apartment. Every thud, every creak in the building sounds like her. Every reflection in glass, every shadow stretching across the walls, feels like her watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. I catch myself staring out the window at her house, trying to see if she's leaving, trying to see if there's any sign of him, of David. I think I see movement behind the curtains sometimes, a pale shape standing perfectly still. And when I blink, it's gone. I feel it in my chest constantly. A growing weight, a certainty that the moment I stop watching, the moment I relax, she'll come for me. And when she does, there will be no one to see it. No one left to remember. Tonight, I think I might be ready to leave. I think I might run, but I know deep down it won't matter. She knows. She always knows. And I am her witness. The Mulranes lived at the end of the hallway, an apartment so quiet it was as if it had absorbed all sound from the building. No one spoke of them. Not because they were secretive, but because people felt instinctively that noticing them carried a cost. Thomas Mulrane was tall, slow, deliberate in all he did. Marlene Mulrane was precise, every movement sharp, angular, exact. They existed together in a space that obeyed rules no one else could perceive. It was just past midnight. The first time I saw them carry something I shouldn't have. I'd been on my balcony, staring at the fog that rolled in from the river, when Marlene stepped out of their door carrying a long, heavy bundle wrapped in dark plastic. Thomas followed, guiding it with equal care. The shape shifted as they walked, rigid and unyielding, and the sound it made when it scraped lightly against the floor sent a chill down my spine. They loaded it into their car and drove off without a sound, their movements unnervingly calm, as though nothing extraordinary had occurred. After that night, Thomas Mulrane was gone. Not casually, not like a vacation or a sudden trip, gone. Marlene remained, unchanged in every way, moving with the same perfection, as though his absence was simply another variable in her meticulous routine. I began observing. At first, I told myself I was curious. I told myself it was mere coincidence, a fascination with the unknown. But curiosity became compulsion. I tracked her movements at night, noting when she left, the items she carried, the rhythm of her steps. She traveled with heavy boxes, bundles bound tightly, often on foot, always in silence. The way she navigated the streets made it clear she was familiar with them in a way the rest of the city would never allow. I followed her once to a warehouse, far from the main streets. She entered, and I watched from the shadows. Hours passed. She did not emerge through any door I could see. I slipped away, haunted by the certainty that whatever she carried in and out of that building was beyond comprehension. My apartment, once a haven, became a trap. I slept lightly, if at all, and every creak of the floorboards sounded like her presence. Shadows flickered where none should be. Reflections in my windows suggested movement behind me. I started cataloging everything, her departures and arrivals, the number of boxes she carried, the intervals between trips. My notebook thickened, but never provided comfort, only an increasingly frantic sense of patterns I could not escape. The boxes were the most terrifying. They appeared at all hours, brought in and out with mechanical efficiency. Their contents, I knew instinctively, were not objects to be found in ordinary homes. The first time I saw her return with a bundle larger than her frame should have allowed, I froze. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The bundle's shape was unmistakable. I knew that Thomas Mulrane, my neighbor, the man who had once lived in that apartment, was gone because of her. And yet the precision of her movements, the control she wielded over every action, made it clear she could do this repeatedly, endlessly, without error. I began to see her everywhere. Shadows outside my window, fleeting figures in my peripheral vision. She became a constant presence, a weight pressing on the walls. My world narrowed until nothing existed but her movements, the boxes, and the slow, insistent pattern of absences and reappearances. I stopped leaving my apartment at night. The streets became impossible. Every corner led back toward her. One night, emboldened by some fragile sense of reason, I slipped into her apartment while she was out. The air was thick with cold. The boxes lined the walls, each marked with a date in bold black ink. Some were years old, others only days. I opened a box, just a corner of the lid, and glimpsed the weight inside. My stomach roiled. The front door clicked. She'd returned. Footsteps, slow, measured. I pressed myself into the shadowed corner of her apartment, silent, heart pounding, imagining she could see me without turning. She moved through the space with her usual precision, adjusting a box here, aligning another there. My existence in her apartment was already known. I could feel it. Every step she took was proof. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe too loudly. Eventually, she returned to the kitchen. I slipped out, taking care to leave the door ajar so it would not announce my presence. The hallways of the building felt wrong. Wider, narrower, twisting impossibly. I stumbled to my apartment, every shadow threatening to reveal me. The sensation didn't leave. She was aware. She'd always been aware. Weeks passed. More boxes arrived. More bundles left. Dates on the boxes crept closer to my own. I began keeping count obsessively, trying to anticipate when I would be part of her pattern. Every sound at night made me flinch. Every shadow suggested movement. I was never alone, even when I thought I was. I stopped looking out my window. I stopped opening my door. Even when the hallway was empty, I felt her presence lingering just outside. The realization grew. My observation had marked me. I'd crossed some invisible threshold. Watching, recording, cataloging, it was no longer curiosity. It was a contract, a sentence I could not escape. Now I sit in the corner of my apartment, notebook in hand, lights off, listening to the faint rhythm of her steps through the building. The boxes will continue to arrive. The bundles will continue to move, and one day, I'll be added to the pattern. She'll continue her ritual. Endless, perfect, unstoppable. I'm no longer a neighbor. I'm a target. I'm waiting, and she is always there.